think for any carer, whether you're caring for somebody who's disabled or ill, or a child with special needs, or maybe somebody who's frail due to old age, all carers feel the same feelings of isolation and, the burden of huge responsibility. It was very difficult trying to juggle everything, trying to look after her, trying to look after the children. One of them has special needs as well. And at times I felt very alone, very low, and it's very difficult. You feel at times you can't really talk to your friends, because unless they've been there, they're not really going to understand. And you don't really want to burden them with, all your thoughts as well. So you can get very stuck with, decision making and planning and worrying about the future.
And Jeanne joins us now. Thanks for coming in, Jeanne. You spoke there about the difficulty and how isolating it was. How much do you think people don't really understand what goes into caring for a loved one?
Well, it's difficult. Like any of these things, if you haven't been there and done it, you can't really know, the lows that you can get to. And I think, I would have always been very aware how my mood as well affected my mum and the kids. So you sort of get into a routine of maybe seemingly coping and being very capable and running around with a smile on your face, when underneath you're suffering, and your feelings, your own feelings, because obviously the focus is on the person you're caring for. Your own feelings can get lost in the hecticness of everything.
Your mum was a very active and very independent sort of person, so it must have been incredibly frustrating for her when this happened.
It was awful, and I mean, she got very sad about it and frightened about the future. I mean, it happened so suddenly. I mean, one moment she was looking after my son, and I was working during the morning and doing my graphic design company, and she was my baby minder during the morning. And she just come back from a trip from Egypt. She was very lively, very active, and this suddenly happened. So within a matter of a day, she was from this lively, active granny. She was in a wheelchair, not able to move, not able to speak properly at the beginning, and it was very distressing for all of us.
How much time did she have to spend in hospital?
She spent a whole year in hospital. Wow. They called it a dense stroke. It was a very severe stroke, and they said she was lucky to survive. I often say she had other thoughts on that at the time, but she made a much better recovery than they thought she would. Okay. But she never regained her left side. Her left side is completely paralysed.
Okay. That must have been very distressing for you all as a family. And then on top of that, you had to weigh up the options of what you were going to do next. Was your mum going to come home? Was she going to go somewhere else? What were you thinking at this time?
Well, we didn't know for a while how well she was going to recover. And so, I decided at the beginning to try and obviously make the plan that she would come back to her own house, because she kept saying, you're not going to leave me here. What's going to happen to me? I need to go back to my own home. And so I decided I better start planning for her to go home, even though I didn't know whether she was going to be able to or not. And luckily she did in the end. But that year was filled full of, trying to get planning permission to put a bathroom downstairs in her house. Unfortunately, her house was listed, which made it more complicated. Right. So, and managing the building project and looking after I only had one child at the time. He was 18 months old. And we were about to adopt another child, so we were going through all of that and trying to run my graphic design business and see her every day. That year went, I can't really remember much that year.
Eventually, you had to let your business go.
I had to let the business go. There was no choice really in the matter. I mean, my second son, we brought home my second son from Guatemala, pretty much coincided with my mum coming home from hospital. So it became very evident that I couldn't do it all. So I had to let the business go, which I found very, very difficult, because I'd had it for 13 years.
So you had to juggle so much, young kids, toddlers, all these things happening in your own life, and then your mum trying to adapt to a whole new lifestyle as well. Day to day, how did you cope? What was the average day like in the family home?
It was difficult, very ups and downs. I mean, obviously, when she came home, it was brilliant, and to sort of a huge sense of achievement. To see her in her own home, and you know her grandchildren on her knee, and the fact that I thought it was going to be very important for her to get to know her grandchildren in her own home, and for them to know her in her own home rather than in an institution, and so. That was wonderful, but there were days that were very, very difficult, and you know, especially during the summertime, because essentially we were in one room, her living room and her dining room sort of were in one, and we couldn't go out because I couldn't manage two small children unless I had help and a wheelchair, and then later we adopted another baby, so it was quite claustrophobic, and for hours on end we'd be stuck in the one room.
Was your mum able to communicate?
Yes, she was. Her speech came back properly, and it didn't affect her mind at all. So, you know, that's wonderful. It was wonderful.